Baruch Hashem, the day before Lag BaOmer is not boring. No day is boring, but especially a day like this. And so we're standing over here very close to the shuk and getting a lot of stuff done in honor of tonight's parade. Everyone's welcome to join us. And of course, thank you to Mordechai and Raya for hosting this special edition of Kabbalah Café. Because tonight and tomorrow will be Lag BaOmer, so we are going to have the Kabbalah Café today, and tomorrow morning will be part of a 24-hour celebration starting from this evening all the way till Shabbos. Thank you, Mordechai and Raya, for hosting this special edition of Kabbalah Café, which is being dedicated to our dear friends Gershom and Rachel Dandy for being so dedicated to this shir of Kabbalah Café. There was once a woman in the United States. She was in her process of doing teshuvah, becoming a Baalat Teshuvah, and she wanted to spend Shabbos by a wonderful couple. And they had the Friday night meal on the Shabbos day. Well, after the Friday night meal, everyone went upstairs to the bedrooms, and everyone went into their specific. Then the parents had a discussion, and they had actually an argument, and they didn't want the guest to hear the argument. So they went downstairs into one of the rooms. They had their argument for a while, and they come out of the room, and they see that the woman is sitting in the kitchen, in the room next to where they were sitting. And they understood that the guest had heard the entire conversation. They were extremely embarrassed, especially due to the fact that this woman, the guest, was in the middle of the process of coming closer to Yiddishkeit. Well, what could they do? In Hebrew we say fadicha. But Motzei Shabbat, after Shabbat, the guest is getting ready to go, and she says to the couple, she says, you know what, I had an amazing Shabbat over here with you, and I've decided to make a significant progress in my coming closer to Yiddishkeit. She said, the entire Shabbos was great, but there was one thing that was the highlight of my Shabbos. Yes, you guessed it. It was the argument that the couple had on the Friday night after the meal in the room next door. And she explained that hearing the argument that you had with such respect, understanding the other's position, and at the end coming to a final word and understanding and mutual respect, that had the greatest effect on me. Tonight is going to be Lag BaOmer. And Lag BaOmer is one of the highlights of the Sfirat Omer. Because on Lag BaOmer, that's when we do not mourn the passing of the almost 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. They passed away because the Talmud says, Lo nahagu kavod zeh bazeh. They did not have the appropriate honor for one another. The day that they stopped passing away obviously indicates that there was a great level of, at some point, of mutual honor, and therefore they stopped passing away. That's a good enough reason for celebration. The strange thing is that when the Talmud says, Lo na'agu kavod zeh bazeh, the Talmud tells us how many students Rabbi Akiva had and how many passed away. It doesn't say 24,000 students. It says 12,000 pairs. That sounds interesting. Why didn't you just say clearly 24,000? Instead of having to go around the bush to touch your left ear with your right hand, just say straight 24,000 students. Why say 12,000 pairs? And actually, that strengthens the question, a different question. How is it possible that these great Torah scholars did not have the appropriate honor and respect? Their Rebbe, Rabbi Akiva, was the one that interpreted last week's Parsha, where it says, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," you should love your fellow Jew just as yourself. Rabbi Akiva explains, "Zeh klal gadol b'Torah." This is a great rule in the Torah. You know the famous song, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Amar Rabbi Akiva, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Of all sages of our history, it was Rabbi Akiva that stated the importance of, Rabbi Akiva stated the importance of loving your fellow Jew as yourself. How is it possible that of all sages, he was the one that his students missed the boat? And especially, it says that they were pairs, 12,000 pairs. Doesn't that indicate their love and affection for one another? So the message of Lag BaOmer is a message of respect. And that's the point that we're going to try to explain today. And by the way, it's connected to the Parsha, because usually the Kabbalah Café is preparation for the Parsha. Which Parsha is it that teaches us about Sfirat Omer, the counting of the Omer? You guessed it, this week's Parsha. Usfartam lachem mimachrat Shabbat. Yesterday's Chumash, for the Chitat of yesterday, that you should count the Omer. So this whole lesson and the message that we're going to learn from this is going to be extra connected to this week's Parsha and Lag BaOmer itself. Sfirat Omer is not just the counting, like last night. We counted 32 days of the Omer. By the way, it's a very special day. 32 is Lev, the numerical value of Lev, which is the day before. We should be careful not to say the day of tonight, even though it's the day you're allowed to, but day before 33. So we're going to connect this whole idea of love with Lev. Lamed Bet, the heart, and the feeling, the embrace between one Jew and another. That's another good reason to have the Kabbalah Café today and not tomorrow, because today is Lev. 4 weeks and 4 days of the Omer. In addition to that, there's also the Kabbalistic concept of Sfirat Omer. What is that? The 7 midot, the 7 levels of emotion. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchut. Chesed is kindness. Gevura is severity and strength. Chesed is like love. You have two individuals who love each other, whether it's spouses, parents, and children, children in a class, siblings. There's a ahava. That's the chesed. The chesed is the ahava between each other. But then you have the gevura. So usually, the gevura is looked at as being a negative thing. Punishment, anger are associated with gevura. But today we're going to learn something, a beautiful concept, how positive gevura can be and how positive gevura really is. Why is gevura considered to be something which is not so positive? Because gevura is looking at another person with his limitations, how he is different from me. The chesed, you want to give, chesed, ahavat Yisrael, giving. But you're looking at ahava, how I like that person. I appreciate that characteristic within you. That's why I love you. But then you have kavod. Kavod is honor. When you honor someone, it's because you recognize their limitations, and you may not appreciate it. It may not be connected to you, but nevertheless, you want to bond with a person. That's called kavod. Kavod is different than ahava. Ahava means love, affection. But the focus of the ahava is me. The focus of the ahava is me. I appreciate what you have. What's the kavod? Kavod is, even though I may not connect to you because we don't really get along, nevertheless, I respect you. Isn't that a beautiful concept of gevura? Gevura is not necessarily something negative. Gevura means limitations. So you recognize within your spouse or within your friend their limitations, and I don't necessarily, that's a difference like a young couple, right? A young couple gets married, they see the sparkles in your spouse's eyes, but they say that sometimes it may not last for that long. 1, 2, 3 years. Wow. One person gave my wife and I a beautiful bracha during our 7 brachas, that your first year should continue forever. But after, what usually happens, after a few years, then all of a sudden you start seeing, hey, 1 second. My spouse doesn't really, we're not terribly compatible. And so the kavod that's where the kavod comes in. 4 or 5, 40 years, 50 years later after you're married, and you realize that maybe we're not that so compatible. We can still be the most connected in the entire world. Because the kavod, you have the mutual respect, even if you might feel that there may not be the compatibility, but the honor and respect is there. Actually, Lag BaOmer, the sphere of Lag BaOmer, is Hod Shebahod. Hod is connected to Gevura. It's an inner beauty. And that's perhaps the idea of Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer means that the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped to pass away. The students of Rabbi Akiva realized what their mistake was. What does the Talmud say? Lo nahagu kavod ze b'zeh. It doesn't say they didn't love each other. I'm sure they loved each other. They were students of Rabbi Akiva. Of course they loved each other. More than you can imagine. But they were missing in the honor. When it came to a moment where their friend, their pair, said something that they didn't exactly agree with, oy vavoy, as they say in Hebrew. There started to be a rift between the two. And therefore, that's the message that we need to have as far as it comes to Sfirat Omer and the concept of the chesed and the gevura, the kindness and the severity. They're both important. They're both good. They're both holy. The chesed is the ahava, the love, which is wonderful, but it's not enough. We need to also work on our gevura, on the hod, and the hod shebahod, which is going to be tonight. That this hod shebahod, we have to add in our Avat Yisrael, and that is the secret which stopped the plague of the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, or the 12,000 pairs of students of Rabbi Akiva. It's not enough to be a pair and that they should love each other, but there also has to be the mutual respect. A couple of beautiful stories which really bring out this idea. So one time, when the Rebbe was giving out dollars, there were parents that came with a little girl, and the girl wanted to hold her doll. So the parents said, in a few minutes we're going to see the Rebbe. It's not really respect to take your doll with you while the Rebbe, to confront the Rebbe. But the girl was adamant. She really wanted to take her own doll with her.
And so they came by. The Rebbe gives the little girl $1, and then he said to her, "What's your daughter's name?" So she's referring to who she was holding, and the Rebbe and the girl said to the Rebbe, "Chaya Mushka." So the Rebbe gave her $1. What was the Rebbe essentially saying? He was saying to her that the Rebbe was understanding and appreciating the girl for who she was, for her feelings. It was very immature and very babyish, but that's a little girl. The little girl wanted her doll, and understanding, being on her level, recognizing her situation. One of my friends, that's a shliach, it's a rabbi in Europe. The one time before he got married, his mashpia, Rabbi Mendel Futterfass, asked him, "Did you buy your ring yet for the marriage, for the chuppah for your wife?" And he said yes. So he said, "Please show it to me." He said, "Please tell me, what do you see?" He said, "I see a gold ring." He says, "What else do you see?" He said, "I see a round ring that I'm going to marry my wife under the chuppah." When you give your kala the ring, you are going to realize that you're going to respect her, even if she has faults, even if you can't connect to them. Nevertheless, you still have a strong bond with her because she is the other part of your neshama. I just want to finish off with one amazing story. And this is the story that goes as follows. There was once a person in Florida that was online in his car for a fast food store. His name was Arthur Rosenfeld. And as he is in the lane for receiving his food, his order, his car stalls. And so the guy behind him starts honking, like you hear a lot of these honking over here in the central Yerushalayim. And so he's trying to fix his car, but his car doesn't want to start. The guy behind him starts honking and honking. And he says, "I'm sorry, I can't move." So the car behind him is screaming at him, saying all kinds of words. And then he gets into his car, the guy behind him, and gives him, he bumps into him. And the car starts to go. So as he goes to the window, and he pays for his food. And then he says, "I want to pay for the food of the guy behind me." He says, "Why?" He bumped into you with his car. So he says, "Because he probably had a very bad day at work, or a fight with his spouse, or disappointed with his children, and that's why he's upset. So I want to help him to calm him down." And so he paid for it for the guy behind him. When the guy behind him came, the guy behind him realized that she said, "You don't have to pay because the guy in front of you paid for you." He said, "You must have had a bad day. That's why you screamed at him, and that's why you bumped into him with your car." He was shocked. After 2 minutes, he says, "I can't believe it. He paid for the guy behind him." And then she had to explain to the third and the fourth and the fifth guy why, and each one was so amazed. It went till 20 people that each one paid for the guy behind him. So it's a question of us. Perhaps we don't connect to the individual and to the love and to the feelings, and there's no compatibility with the person behind us or with us. But we have to have respect, and to add in Ahavat Yisrael, love of our fellow Jew, Ahavat Chinam. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope to see you and you and you and you and everyone tonight at 6 o'clock at the Evelina School on 38 Usishkin Street for a great ta'alucha, for a great parade of Lag BaOmer. All of us together, marching together through Nachlaot and the Rechavia in Yerushalayim. Have a great Lag BaOmer and all the best. We'll see you B'ezrat Hashem tonight.